Hello, I'm Jeff Pruitt. I'm the CEO of Tallwave. Tallwave is a customer experience design company. We are in the second installment of our Innovator series, and I am here with Matt Fantazier, who's the senior brand manager at Johnson & Johnson US Baby's brand portfolio. But Matt, welcome. Would love to hear as we get into it just a little bit about both your personal and professional story. I did check out that you interned at Deloitte and then you were a analyst. So data tied to brand, very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I've been at J&J for about 14 and a half years now, but I did start out as an accountant way back when. Studied accounting, got my CPA, and spent about 7 years in finance at J&J actually. Made the switch over to marketing about 8 years ago, and that's definitely been I guess a hallmark of my experience is combining that data and analytics side with creativity, and that's the exciting thing about what I get to do for my work now is combining those two things and data analytics and creativity to connect with consumers.
Yeah, that's great. I actually too am too a CPA and studied accounting. Don't know why I actually got into it, but love the job more on the marketing and branding side. But we'll get into how data and brand connect. But first, how do you believe marketing strategies have been forced to change for big legacy brands like yourself during COVID?
Well, I think the evolution really changed before COVID, and like a lot, and this has been talked a lot about the last 10 months or so. It's just accelerated a lot of things that had been advancing maybe at a medium pace, slow pace, but the need to change is obviously right in our face. And I think one of the big evolutions is brands and companies thinking about moving away from thinking about advertising and retail and thinking about enabling access. Like, how do we enable access to consumers and how do we foster discovery versus just advertising? I think that's one of the biggest changes that I'm seeing and what we're thinking about. And COVID's forced consumers to adopt all sorts of new habits and behaviors. More research is happening online, on social media. Consumers are becoming accustomed to different shopping experiences, and we have to be there. There's just countless specific things that have changed from an e-commerce perspective, and e-commerce, media habits, consumer demand for brands to stand for something. I mean, there's so much that has changed really in the last 10 months, and I think brands are just being pushed to change as fast as the world around them is changing, and we can't wait for perfection. I think that's the biggest challenge right now, is that so much has changed so fast that we have to try, and you're in an uncomfortable territory of not knowing. You're doing new things, operating differently, but we have to try to learn and adapt.
Yeah, so when you think about that and you're pushing out maybe different work streams or different approaches to drive an experience through your brand with your customer, how are you looking at that in conjunction with data analytics and really creativity and design?
Yeah, I mean, data, the intersection of data and creativity, I think it's just so much more, prominent now, and it's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing is unlocking this data. There's so much, and as more commerce and media consumption and interaction, on a website or wherever happens online, there's a data trail there. But what do we do with it is really the next big question. You can have all the data in the world, but if you don't know what it means, if you don't understand what to do differently, or if it's good or it's bad, it's sort of meaningless. So, we seemingly know more about consumers as digital media matures and data becomes more robust, but you have to have that feedback loop to consistently learn and adapt. And I think one of the challenges there, it just can't be a machine. It can't, at the end of the day, we're talking to humans. They may be online, they may be buying things online, but you have to still make that personal connection. I think that's where the tension point really lies, is that algorithms don't make purchases, people do. So the data can be incredibly powerful in understanding what's working, what's resonating, but you still need to grab attention and make a human connection there. The data is allowing us to try more things and push further, but I think it can be used as an enabler, because you can quickly figure out if something's working or not versus feeling trapped in that we want to, we're going to do what we know works because it's safe. We can do unsafe things because of data, but it's, unsafe from a performance standpoint. But you know, it's making that connection and creating that loop that I think is really the biggest challenge right now.
So maybe getting a little bit more specifically, what kind of data do you look at J&J, and how does that influence maybe design and or how you test design and get it out in the real world?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, it's not just one data source. I think it's important to not get too myopic and focus on, short-term ROI is a good example. It's
Right.
it's paying the bills, it's keeping the lights on. Like, that's important. Without a doubt, short-term ROI matters. I would lose my job if I ignored it. But it's a data point. So brand awareness or different equity metrics, like that's important for a long-term health assessment to understand, is what you're doing driving relevance with your consumer? Is it something that they like? Do people agree with what we stand for? And that's, you need both. You need to know, is what you're doing selling product? Is what
Right.
you're doing getting people to respond positively? But it's that mix. You need to understand all of it, which it can be hard. It's easy to anchor on the one good metric and declare success, but we do
Well,
need to take a broad approach to it.
well, all too often we'll focus as marketers at the bottom of the funnel because it's the most trackable. But at the same
Yeah,
time, as you look at the upper funnel or mid funnel, you are now able to track some brand awareness, and it's
yeah,
important to make sure that you do measure it, but it shouldn't get the same um, level of ROI expectation that you do at the bottom of the funnel.
yeah. I mean, it's a different job to be done. You need all of it. I think it's easy to go, my job is to sell product, but really it's to create awareness, drive consideration, and like, you need to do all that stuff.
So,
So
so how does taking this then to the experience that you're driving for your customer? How does J&J measure customer experience both digitally and in store? Like, what are the key components of understanding that experience, that it's seamless, that it's one of value, that you're educating the customer correctly?
yeah, I mean, it's really taking a look at the entire journey. I think, there are so many touch points on consumer journeys today, and I think when you look at it, the consumer journey being, very non-linear is a reality that we're dealing with. So customer experience, consumer experience takes a lot of shapes and forms. Where it's, are they getting, and thinking about what they need, like what is the consumer's current needs and expectations. So if I'm thinking about, in my business, I talk to new parents a lot, so they're very information hungry.
Right.
So providing them with knowledge, information, education about ingredients or what our products do, how to give your child their first bath, that's relevant. They need that to lower purchase barriers. um, but it may be tips if it's a more complex product. If you're in a category that, it's not an intuitive sort of process, or it's a, you're, it takes some skill to use your product, you're going to have to provide support. And you see a lot of good examples from like hardware stores where they do DIY videos on YouTube.
Right.
That's super important. If you don't know how to install a toilet or something like that, you're not going to go buy one. So they need that as far as their consumer journey and experience goes. So it's really putting the consumer at the center, which is a little bit of a trite thing to say, but I think it's true. It's entirely, that's first things first.
Right. So I've got a question for you, because implementing these strategies is really difficult for a lot of brands internally. So when brands have potentially a customer acquisition group, a brand group, and a customer experience group, the reality is it's still the same customer. They're
Yeah,
just entering your brand by getting good information about you. It's resonating. You're working on the acquisition, but then when you bring them in, it's still that customer that you're driving the
yeah,
experience. Sometimes it's multiple stakeholders.
yeah.
How do you manage integrating all the good data that you get around the experience, like you were talking about, talking to actual mothers and parents, and then being able to drive that in a multitude of strategies that brings a seamless experience to the customer?
We talk a lot about how consumers don't actually know if they're getting an ad from me or from a retailer or whomever. They see an
Right.
ad for Johnson's. And 99% of the time they just see, oh, it's a, it's a baby shampoo ad or whatever. But reality is, to your point, there's so many parts of the ecosystem at play. It could be an ad or an experience that's managed by a retailer partner. It could be managed by me, PR, an influencer. It's it's so important to be coordinated and have that partnership. I mean, we put a lot of effort in to that discussion and alignment up front of what are our objectives, how are we achieving these together, what is our one communications plan to make sure we're not operating in silos from a creative perspective. It's not different messages from a data perspective, that we're talking to the right people and retargeting the right people, and bringing it all around, just feeding insights to one another. It's all the same consumer. We just trick ourselves into thinking it's different, but it's not.
Right. Right. Different stakeholders and sometimes different measurements, which drive different initiatives. But trying to align all those is I think where Nirvana sits for both internally and companies like ours, trying to find that alignment for these customers around, like you said, customer sitting in the center.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So, from a digital first strategy perspective, you're a huge legacy company with over 200 companies inside it. How do you drive that overall digital first strategy as an organization?
Yeah, I mean, we think about, again, putting the consumer at the center and thinking about where they're first, like where are they actually spending their time? What are their actual behaviors in the real world that we want to interact with them in? And digital first, I think, can be misconstrued as digital only or digital media, but there's also like a performance mindset that I think is important within a digital first mindset of data collection, iteration, optimization that also needs to be fed into this. But thinking about, from a consumer journey perspective, what are those moments along their journey where we can deliver a transformational brand building experience? Where does it matter? Where is it really high stakes? And then put our time and effort there to really make a difference. And it could be communications, it could be commerce, technology, it could be an app experience, whatever. But it really, digital first doesn't mean anything unless the consumer's there, or that's keying into a behavior of, they're working from home, or they like to shop on their phone, or watch how-to videos before they buy something. So putting ourselves in their shoes and then leveraging digital technology, e-commerce, to really enable those kind of brand building experiences. And then, as I mentioned, what do we learn from that and how do we get better? That performance mindset. I think, to me, that's what digital first actually means, which is a lot and pretty complex, but it's not, we're going to run Facebook ads and that we're now digital first. That's objectively not true. A lot of brands do that and they're totally not. But it's a mindset shift, really.
Well, and it's also a mindset shift to really understand that even up front, when you're identifying your strategies, digital can be utilized to understand deeper sentiment and intent from the persona, and also being able to look at engagement metrics and engagement features and overall demand. That does drive both your online and offline strategy through that journey.
Totally.
And I think that's missed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the it's getting back to that feedback loop a little bit of, and then it's, we don't want to have media plans living in silos. We don't want insights living in silos either. So if you run a programmatic campaign and find out that claim X drives twice as much conversion, be pretty good to know as you're developing other communications or strategies that, hey, this is a, behavior changing sort of message. This matters. Let's think about that. Let's iterate on this a little bit. And that's what we strive for. That's, I think, Nirvana for me, is getting to that place. But yeah, to the extent you can use it as a research tool, I think that's one of the less leveraged aspects of digital media right now, and why you're seeing more and more CPGs get into DTC commerce. I mean, I can't imagine that a lot of these companies are making any money on having a DTC website selling snacks or soda, but the data they're getting from it's invaluable. And that's
Right.
really why they're doing it.
Right. As you think about 2021 and 2020 has been a really interesting year, and COVID's really, in many ways, like you said at the beginning of the meeting, drove the need to really understand that customer experience. If you were to define the experience that you want with your customer as you continue to go into 2021, what does that relationship look like for J&J?
I think at a very high level, that relationship is one that is meaningful and relevant, that we are listening to what our consumers need and expect, and we're delivering on that expectation. So, you know, it got put into real focus in the last year with brands needing to think about how they adapt their communications and, in the face of COVID, in the face of social unrest and racial inequality and all these different things. There's a lot on consumers' minds, and it's not just product. It could be what's happening at home, or having to homeschool a child for the year, which is a huge challenge, as a lot of us know. But really finding ways to resonate with them on that personal level. We're a relevant brand, we're meaningful, and we deliver against those expectations. For us, a lot of new parents are coming into the category in a very challenging time. Right now, being an expectant parent is incredibly challenging, which is why last year we launched our In It Together program, which is a partnership with Meredith, that we created all sorts of different content and videos around what questions to ask your doctor before you go to the hospital, what to expect when you're giving birth, can your partner be in the delivery room with you, all these sort of questions we knew were rattling around in parents' minds. And that there was no tie to sales there. That is purely equity. But we knew, like, we couldn't talk about shampoo and lotion without addressing this enormous stressor that is happening in the lives of millions of people right now. We had to talk about this. And if our mission is to make sure babies have the healthiest start to life, how do we not address a global health pandemic? Like, that's crazy. So I think it's thinking about that and knowing, we have to be relevant. And if we can continue to do that, if we can continue to make connections and meaningful connections with modern consumers, we'll be okay. But it's being agile enough to adapt with the needs and what's happening in the world around us.
Yeah, it's really made prominent and propelled customer experience forward faster than I think a lot of people would have expected. In the authentic, transparent, empathetic approach to really understanding where people are with, even in their day, their mindset. It's different for everybody, but being able to, I don't like the word market as much as I like the word be able to connect to them with your offering, which is an offering of support in many respects.
Yeah, totally.
So one last question for you, which is, how do you define innovation for both the business that you're in and for J&J?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is finding what consumers actually want and need and delivering on it. That could be product innovation to meet emerging needs. You see that across industries in response to the at-home economy now. People's lives have dramatically changed in the last year, so there's new physical needs. We're also seeing communications evolution and innovation there. So it could be what are the needs of consumers, or what are their new questions, what are they wrestling with now, like the example I gave with parenting information and around COVID. But I think regardless of, again, it needs to be meaningful, and innovation needs to, it can't just be a fresh coat of paint. I mean, you can do that can work, but ideally it's evolving with changing needs. And I think if we've seen anything in the last year, we've seen that needs are changing really rapidly, and the brands and the companies that can continue to evolve and keep pace with what people are looking for, that's kind of the magic combination there, and can be tough. Product innovation obviously takes time, and for us, we're everything we do is backed in science and research, so we can't just quick turn new products out the door in a couple of weeks. But taking those insights and really thinking about, what do new parents or new consumers, what are they looking for? Are they looking for germ killing characteristics of a wash right now. Okay, like let's think about that. How do we deliver on that? But it could also mean information, like the last example too.
Yeah. Well, Matt, from your background from the very beginning to all the work that you've done at J&J, very insightful and great to have you on for the second installment of our Innovator series. So I really appreciate your time and look forward to connecting again soon.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.